Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
I got my bags packed and on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. Looking real good in my passport photo. Oh no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 820. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about Roman ruins, Byzantine churches, markets and a promenade, fortresses, and ferries, the kind that are boats, as we go to Thessaloniki in Greece. Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Let's talk about Thessaloniki. I'd like to welcome to the show Carol from Ambrosia Travel, who's come to talk to us about Thessaloniki, Greece. When I reached out and said I was interested in people to talk about Greek destinations, Carol was recommended for me. So, Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And what's your connection with Greece, first of all?
I went to Greece for the first time when I was 19, and I fell in love with Greece. That was in 1987, and I changed my major to modern Greek studies. I moved over there, lived there for 20 years, and I've been going back for about 2 months per year for the last 10 years. So I have a very strong connection with Greece. It's my home, actually. That's what I feel. I feel it's my home.
Excellent. And why should someone go to Thessaloniki?
Thessaloniki is amazing, is fascinating. It's a city full of history. It's a beautiful city, great food, wonderful places to visit around Thessaloniki. Halkidiki is amazing, completely amazing. And Mount Olympus is not too far away. It's actually, I might prefer it more than Athens because Athens is chaotic, whereas Thessaloniki is much more walkable. It's a big city with a small town feel, I would say.
Excellent. But it is the second biggest city in Greece, we should say. We're not talking about a little town here
No,
the week
there,
before now.
yes, there are 1 million people that live there, so it's definitely not small.
Excellent. And what kind of itinerary would you recommend for someone going to Thessaloniki?
You would need to spend at least, as a minimum, 3 days. I would say 3. The minimum would be 3 nights if you want to. If you only have a week and you want to explore the surrounding areas, but you can definitely fill 5 to 7 days in Thessaloniki and do different things every day. So it just depends on your pace and how much you want to see and how ambitious you are.
And so what should we see?
So definitely you should see in the Aristotle Square is the center of the city. I would recommend staying around Aristotle Square. Platia Aristotelus is what they call it. So it has the promenade on the waterfront, which is gorgeous. There's a new park. It opened in 2013. And you start there and you walk all the way to the White Tower, the White Tower is the symbol of the city of Thessaloniki. So that's one thing you do. And then around Aristotle Square, there's the restaurant district that's called Ta Ladadica, which means the oil place, I guess, where the oil is.
I'm not going to second guess your Greek pronunciation or your Greek translation here, just so you know. So just say it with confidence and we'll all believe you.
Yes. And amazing restaurants, which is right next to Aristotle Square. And above Aristotle Square is an area called Athonos Square, which also has amazing restaurants. Actually, Thessaloniki is famous in all of Greece for its restaurants. It has amazing cuisine. And I can talk a long time about that, and I want to, but the
We've
sites
got
first, and then we can come back to that.
Okay, we can slow down here just a bit. We don't want to just name the sites. We want to say why you should see them or what they are. So you
Oh,
mentioned
yes.
the White Tower, for instance, which is an old Byzantine fortress. Can we go in and visit the White Tower? Can we go up and look at the view, or what do we?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, you can. Yes. So they've turned it into a kind of museum. It is
okay,
a museum, but the exhibitions are more about the history of Thessaloniki. It doesn't have actual artifacts like the Archaeological Museum
got it.
or the Byzantine Museum. I don't know what the fee you have to pay. I'm not sure how much it is, but there is an entrance fee. And the best part is the view on the top. The exhibitions, if you want to find out, you can read it all online. It's not anything that's really as impressive artifacts, but it's an
Okay,
interesting place, and it has a restaurant and the view on top. But most
got
people just walk around the outside. So Thessaloniki, I guess I should talk about the history, because history is very important for the city, and
it.
the sites are historical. So Thessaloniki was founded by the Macedonians in 300 BC. I don't know the exact date.
315 is what I've got. Yeah, you're in the right area.
Yes, and it was named after the daughter of Philip II, whose name was Thessaloniki, which means Niki is victory. So it's victory over Thessaly,
Okay,
which is a region of Greece. And Thessaloniki is in the region called Macedonia.
got it. Not to be confused with the country now of Northern
Northern
Macedonia. Yeah,
Macedonia.
exactly.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. Which was it's a quite controversial topic in Greece, but they've had such a history of invasions and occupations. They're constantly afraid that the Turks are going to invade, or that Bulgaria is going to occupy Thessaloniki, because there have been various wars throughout the centuries. Anyway, it was founded in 300 BC, and then it really came into importance during the Eastern Roman Empire, which
Hmm.
was around 300 AD. Galerius was, I don't know if he was based there, but the Roman ruins, he's the one who built up the city. And there is his palace. There's the arch, which was built, the victory. I don't know who they, for some military victory. A hippodrome, a forum, that the Roman Forum, which is a huge site, and they discovered by accident when they were building the foundations for the court in the 60s, the 1960s, only 40, 50 years ago. And they're building now a metro, and they have found, this is all recent, they still haven't opened the metro station because the archaeologists are busy excavating more ancient ruins. These are classical times, ruins from the classical Greece. So it's really rich in history.
And
During,
one thing you
yeah.
skipped over, which is halfway in between the 300 BC and the 300 AD time period you named, is for those of you who are familiar with the New Testament and you've ever
Oh, of
read the
course, yeah.
first and second letters to the
Yes.
Thessalonians and Thessaloniki are the same place.
Yes. Oh, yes, of course. Thank you for reminding
That's all
me.
right. I've got another podcast that talks all about that kind of stuff. So,
Yes, and so during the Byzantine years, it was the second largest city
I didn't
after
realize that.
Constantinople. In Greece, you will never hear a Greek say the word Istanbul.
Sure.
It's still Constantinople.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that it wasn't that long ago that Athens was a small town, that it had, I don't know how you say it. I mean, it had been a big city, obviously, but it had become a town of maybe 5,000 people. Even though now, I don't remember what percentage of Greeks live in Athens. It's huge.
It's about almost half. I think
Yeah,
it's about 5 million, and I think there are 11 million who live in Greece. So
right.
it's
But and obviously a lot of history there. But it's interesting that at one point or for a long period of time, this was the larger city.
oh yes, yes, definitely, and much more important during the Middle Ages, during the
Hmm.
Byzantine time, and during Ottoman rule. So the sites are close to Aristotle Square, are the Roman sites before the Byzantine era. And then as
Hmm.
you go up the hill, so there's the upper town and then there's a lower town. The upper town is filled with Byzantine churches. Byzantine means that they were built before 1450. So
Okay, before Ottoman
1453,
rule. Okay.
yeah, 1453 is when Constantinople fell, and I think
Hmm.
Thessaloniki fell before that, in around 1420 or 1430. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So that's what Byzantine means when I talk about Byzantine churches. And I think I forget the number. It's something like 12 UNESCO heritage sites. All of the Byzantine churches are UNESCO sites, and the
Got
Roman ruins.
it. Byzantine churches, I'm expecting a lot of mosaic work, for instance, inside. Am I in the right area? And the outside is going to be the kind of domes that look like Hagia Sophia. And
Yes,
okay,
exactly, yes. And a lot of frescoes as well, which,
okay,
so most of these churches, there's only one church that was not made into a mosque. These churches, the mosaics and the frescoes, mainly frescoes though, were covered by plaster. And after Thessaloniki was liberated in 1912, so it's only been a part of Greece for a little over 100 years. Yes, after the Balkan Wars, so there were two Balkan Wars,
hmm,
and in 1912 it became independent. So they converted the Greeks and the Turks. The Turks convert the churches to mosques, and then the Christians come back and convert them back into churches. So they were busy restoring these frescoes.
okay.
And so there's a church, there are a number of churches, but
Is there a favorite that if you only had time to see one, you ought to see?
they're quite close together in the upper town. You should definitely go there. There's Osios David, which has amazing frescoes, and Saint Nicholas the Orphan, Orphanos, which also has amazing frescoes. Also, Saint Dimitri, you have to see Saint Dimitri.
Okay,
That's the patron saint of the city. The site was Roman baths, I
okay,
believe. And there's a crypt underneath. Dimitri was martyred there
okay.
in around 300 AD. And they built a church on top of that shortly afterwards. And so it has Byzantine artwork, it has very old artwork in its main church of the town. It's what everyone must see. Yes, it's a must see.
Okay.
It's closer to Aristotle Square. It's in between the upper and the lower city.
Okay. Got it.
There are two monasteries up in the upper city, Vlatadon Monastery and, oh goodness, I can't remember the other one. There's so many sites, and
Lazarus,
it's hard to keep track of them all.
the former Catholic Lazarist monastery,
Yes, that is it.
Moni Lazariston.
Yes. That's the other one. Yes.
Got it.
And so if you go up to the upper city, you must go to the upper city. If you only can go to one section, the upper city it's small winding streets and small houses, very colorful as well, and it has Byzantine and Ottoman ruins as well. Maybe not ruins, but some mosques, some bathhouses.
Which is a Turkish or Ottoman bath.
Bey Haman is the bath
Okay.
that was built in 1444. Now it's an exhibition space, but it was used as a bath until 1968.
Okay.
So that's the Babeza Mausoleum. And there's also a mosque that was a mosque, and it was like a soup kitchen as well during Ottoman times. It was a public kitchen where they fed people, and it was also a seminary. It was a school for imams. So those are the Turkish. Also, Ataturk, who was the father of modern day Turkey, was born in Thessaloniki, and his house has been turned into
I
a
don't know that.
museum. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
that's another interesting thing. Also, there are a number of Jewish sites as well. There's a really great Jewish museum. Thessaloniki's always had a large Jewish community from ancient times, but especially, I think it was many fled from Spain, the Sephardic Jews, I guess you call it.
Yeah.
And so there are a number of ruins. There's the Rogos district and the synagogue. Yad, I'm not saying this right. Yad Lezikaron, something like
Okay.
that. Holocaust monument. So Thessaloniki, that's why I love Thessaloniki, is because it has so much, it's so rich culturally. It's more culturally rich, I believe, than Athens.
It's interesting because Athens, of course, has a lot of the ancient. It's much older than 315
Oh yeah,
BC,
oh yeah.
but of course, having not been around as much in between, it misses a lot of the Byzantine, a lot of the Ottoman, and that sort of history. So, which is the most of the history that we have that isn't in ruins. It's the buildings you can still visit, for instance, from that time period.
Yes, yeah. So all of that is in the upper city. Also, there's the Eptapyrgion. That means 7 towers, but actually there are many more than 7 towers now. And the city walls, which are from Byzantine times, and they are still very much intact. And the view is amazing from up there. So what I suggest is you go up to the Eptapyrgion and work your way down.
So that is in the upper city then?
That's in the upper city. That's at the top of it. Yeah, that was the edge of the city during ancient, well, Byzantine times, medieval. I guess 300 AD, was that considered ancient? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
When it goes all the way down to the White Tower is one of the towers. And there's another one called Trigono Tower or Triangle Tower, Trigon, which you can go in and go up, and it has amazing views, which is up there. And the Eptapir. One other site up in the upper city that people don't know about are Pasha's Gardens, which are really amazing and cool.
So that would be from the Ottoman time.
That would be from the Ottoman time, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And they're also amazing all over the city. They're amazing restaurants, but they're really good restaurants in the upper city too. And it's a kind of cute, quaint area, if you can say. It reminds you of an old village in the city because they don't have big apartment buildings like they do in other parts of the lower city. Yeah,
I feel like you've been dying to talk about restaurants here for a while too, so we should pause here and give you a chance. In the upper city, for instance, are there particular restaurants or the particular dishes we should know about?
Murga has been recommended upper city. So
As a restaurant, I'm assuming.
as a restaurant.
Okay.
But there are various types of restaurants.
Okay.
In Greece in general, but Thessaloniki, like I said, it's famous for. It's really good, especially what they call either. So they have small plates in Greece are called mezedes, which are like little bites. They're kind of like tapas.
Got it. Greek
Yeah.
tapas. Okay.
Yeah, and they're a special type of restaurant that only have these dishes, and they call them mesodopolio, or they call them after the drink that is usually served. So they're tipuradica, which is with tipuro, and uzeri is with uzo.
Okay.
So uzeris are always with seafood. Uzo goes with seafood,
Okay.
whereas tipuro just goes with any small dish.
Oh, I know ouzo, and we've talked about it before in the show. It's the very strong distilled liquor. I don't know the other one though.
So ouzo always has anise, and it's not from grapes. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's from various things. I'm not an expert on ouzo. I just know it's not. The difference with tipuro is that tipuro actually has 3 names, and I've asked numerous Greeks what the difference is, and nobody can tell me. So there's tipuro, is what they call it on mainland Greece. In Crete, they call it tikudia, and then on the islands and in Crete, they call it raki.
Oh, okay. We're talking about raki. Okay, got it.
It's
all right.
but it's all distilled. And it's basically the same thing, and
Got it.
distilled from what is left over from the grapes after they
Right.
make wine.
Okay.
So yes, so Greeks in ancient Greece, the vine, the wheat, and the olive were sacred. And they still in Greece they use every single part of those 3 plants. So not to go to waste what's left over from after making wine, they distill the skins and everything that's left. And sometimes when I was in Astipalia, I had a raki that they said had been distilled 4 times. So I don't know if there's a number they can just keep on distilling it, but it was incredibly smooth.
Okay.
Probably the best stuff I've ever had. Best chiporo. It's evolving. Every year when I go back to Greece, it's getting more and more popular, and there are more varieties of chiporo. Of course, there's a lot of homemade chiporo too, just like homemade wines. So people make their own wines, and then they make chiporo. So sometimes the best stuff comes in a plastic bottle.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, I was given a bottle in Kithera this year, and it was amazing. It had a nutty taste to it.
Got it.
But anyway, so you go and sorry, I'm getting off the topic. In Thessaloniki, you go to these restaurants and they have a whole menu of different tipuro. And tipuro has two varieties, either with anise or without.
Okay.
So you go to these restaurants, and the small plates, there are all kinds of dishes. But in Thessaloniki, they have a lot of, well, Turkish cuisine and Greek cuisine are
Overlap.
overlap, yes.
And talking to a Greek and a Turk about where it came from is just going to get you nowhere.
Yeah, I think a lot of these dishes, they came from Istanbul. They came from the Sultan's kitchen. Like
Okay.
moussaka was, from what the story I heard, it was the Sultan who had chefs come in from France who had studied in France, and I mean, chefs from France, and that's why they have the bechamel sauce, and they put the bechamel sauce
Okay. And
in.
this is the eggplant or potato based dish that looks
Yes,
a bit
moussaka. Yeah.
like lasagna. It's a layered dish.
Yes, yes. Traditionally, it only has eggplant, but the Greeks now put potatoes on the bottom.
Okay, I did not
Eggplant,
know that. All right.
yeah, eggplant, which has been traditionally is fried in olive oil, but now we do it in the oven to make it lighter. Roast
Okay.
it in the oven, and then a meat sauce, a very rich meat sauce with aromatics like cinnamon inside, and then bechamel on top, which is the white thick sauce
Okay.
from French sauce. And so there are various dishes. There's one that's really good called kuyar bedi, which is beef with a puree of eggplant. So it's braised beef with tomato, and it's a delicious, amazing. And so you can
Okay.
find these type dishes all over Thessaloniki, as well as gulbasi, which is another one with beef or lamb that's baked in parchment paper, and all kinds of. So in Thessaloniki, they use the word bureki instead of pita for filo pies. So they're all
Okay.
different kinds of burekia. Bugatsa, which is from Thessaloniki. Bugatsa and the rest of Greece is a sweet. It's a pastry cream inside crunchy filo with powdered sugar and cinnamon on top,
Okay.
which is really amazing. But in Thessaloniki, they use the word bugatsa even for cheese pies. So bugatsa with cheese or bugatsa with spinach. Or
What I'm hearing you say is if I hear that word, I'm going to like it either way, though.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
There's another
So,
sweet that's special to Thessaloniki. It's called trigono Thessaloniki, which means triangle. And so it's a triangle of crunchy phyllo that is filled with sweet cream.
okay.
That's delicious.
Got it.
Konnichiwa, I'm Yuki, a tour leader with Explore. Who knew that hidden among Tokyo's towering skyscrapers was a peaceful tea house surrounded by ancient trees and serene ponds? Actually, I knew. It was my mother's secret sanctuary. Not everyone knows about Tokyo's Hamarikyu Gardens. Arigatou gozaimasu. But you will if you explore. Search exploreworldwide.com and don't just travel, explore.
So I've seen some ruins
Yes.
and I've had some good food.
Uh-huh.
What else am I going to do in Thessaloniki? You mentioned a couple museums that
Oh,
we
yes,
haven't.
definitely. Oh, and their markets too.
Okay.
Yeah, so the museum, the Byzantine Museum, and the Archaeological Museum are right next to each other. And the Archaeological Museum had the finds from Vergina, which is the tomb of Philip the Great, the father of Alexander.
Alexander the Great. Mhm.
Yeah, his father. So they have the amazing, I don't know if you've seen the wreath, the gold wreath that they found. It's a symbol of Macedonia.
Okay.
And the wreath and the star was on this gold box. I don't know, the box. There must be a better word than box.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are in the archaeological museum. So it's not huge, and you can do both of those museums in a day. And also the Jewish museum is also very interesting. And then there are markets that are very close to Aristotle Square, which I say is the center. You walk up towards the upper town, and there is Modiano Market.
And these are all food markets?
They are food markets. Modiano also has other little shops as
Got it.
well. There's a flower market. So there's Athonos Market. They're great restaurants everywhere, but that's also a well-known spot.
Got it.
Kapani Market, Modiano Market, And they're all very close to each other, and they're covered. Modiano and Capani are covered markets,
Got it.
and a flower market as well.
You say covered markets, and I'm picturing that 1800s style roof kind of market.
Yes, a high
Yep.
roof with, yeah,
Okay.
like it is in Istanbul.
Okay.
I don't know if the markets there.
Yeah.
Yes, but exactly that kind of high ceiling but open,
Okay.
covered but completely open. Yes, and just walking around the city is interesting and fun. It's such a walkable city. Wherever you walk, you're going to run into either a ruin or a market or a great place where you want to sit and eat because you'll smell all of the wonderful smells. And it's a very laid back city. And the people from Thessaloniki are very friendly and laid back. So in Athens, they make fun of the people from Thessaloniki because they're so laid back,
That's funny.
And it's a student town as well. Aristotle University in Thessaloniki is the biggest university in the Balkans, and it's very good. It's a prestigious university, and there are a lot of students around. So there are lots of cafes and bars, and people are out.
With people out in that kind of town, is there nightlife you would recommend, or specific cafes you would hang out in?
Nightlife, goodness, no, I don't.
You're not the person to ask, is what I hear.
I'm not the person to ask.
I'm not either, but I ask.
I could call a friend right now.
That's all right. I believe you think you're on a game show here. No, we don't do call a friend.
No, I hate not knowing something though. I'm like, oh,
That's all right.
I didn't even think about that. But cafes, yes, there's one. Oh, so coffee and cocktail bar in La Davica is called the Blue Cup.
Okay.
And there's also a Rebetika tavern. A Rebetika is the music, it's like the Greek blues that was brought over from the refugees. In 1921, there was an exchange of populations between Greece and Turkey.
Not a optional exchange.
No, and about 1 million, I think there were at least 1 million Greeks who were uprooted, and probably that many Turks. I don't know. I always hear from the Greek side. But
the interesting thing is, if you look back at the demographics of Thessaloniki before then, even, it's not a predominantly Greek city.
yes.
And yet if you look at it now, it is by far a predominantly Greek city. But there were a lot of Jews which were brought out as a separate group earlier on in the 1800s and the 1900s, and even going back to the 1500s, and then Turks. So you can see how the cities changed their population, and then a lot of the Greeks who were in, especially Western Turkey, were required to move, required to relocate.
Yes.
So, yeah, a lot of people don't know about it, but it's a fascinating time in terms of historically.
Yes, and it enriched Greece so much culturally. They have the food and the music and just everything. So there's a Rebetika taverna called La Radica with live music, which is a lot of fun. Yes, the Rebetika was an underground music. They talk about hashish and drinking and things like that.
What else we want to see in the city? Because then I also want to ask you about side trips, where we want to go outside the city.
No, I think we covered most of the main things. There's a lot more, but yes.
Anything you feel we really should cover before we move on?
No, I think we covered everything. Yeah. The food and the sites and the markets. Yes.
Excellent. And if you're in Thessaloniki, where should you also get to?
Okay, so first of all, Thessaloniki is a port, and you can take a ferry to the Sporades, to Skathos, Skopelos, Alonisos. You can also take a ferry to the North Aegean islands of Limnos, Vos, Samos. And also, you can go down to the Cyclades, to Syros and Mykonos, but it takes a very long time.
Right.
Those are overnight ferries. The fastest one is to Skathos and Skopelos. It's only 3 hours to Skathos, which is quite close.
Okay.
And to get to Skathos from Athens, you have to take a bus up the mainland and get on the ferry, or you can fly.
Got it.
So those are the islands you can get to from Thessaloniki. But Thessaloniki is above the peninsula called Halkidiki, which is amazing. It's a very green. People think of Greece and they think of the Cyclades, which are very dry and white houses with the blue domed churches. This is so lush. The trees are all the way down to the beaches, which are white sand, and you feel like you're somewhere else. If you have that picture of Greece in your mind, you feel like you're in the Caribbean. So the three legs of the Halkidiki Peninsula, the last leg is Mount Athos, which
Got it.
is, I think, is considered a separate country almost. Not. It belongs to the Orthodox
And I'm
Church.
going to guess you have never been to Mount Athos.
No, of course not. No women are allowed. They say that they're not even female animals, which is ridiculous. But no women are allowed. But men can go. You're welcome to go, and
Hmm.
they will put you up in a monastery. You just have to follow the hours of the monastery. So you have to get
Hmm.
up at 5 in the morning and do what they do. And there's a small island called Amuliani, which if you go to Thessaloniki, if you go to Halkidiki in the high season of August, and maybe end of July and August, and you want a quiet place, then you go to this small island called Amuliani. There's a ferry from, oh, I forget the name of the town, but it's about an hour and a half outside of Thessaloniki, and you get on the ferry, and it takes you to that small, wonderful, off the beaten path island.
Excellent.
So there are also some traditional villages, Arnea, Paronas, which is in, so Halkidiki, like I said, is three legs. So the first one is called Cassandra, which is really built up. I like the more quiet places. I prefer personally Sitonia, which is the second leg, which is not as touristy, not as built up, even though it has gotten quite built in the past 10 years or so. So that's Halkidiki. And then on the other side, you can go to Philippi as well. We're talking about Paul, the Apostle Paul. So he was in Thessaloniki and he also went to Philippi, which is outside of Kavala, which is probably about two and a half hours from Thessaloniki to the east. And Kavala and all of that is over that.
Okay.
And from Kavala, you can get to the other island of Thassos. But then if you go to the west, the town of Vergina is where they found Alexander's father, Philip of
Hmm.
Macedon, the tomb, which is a little over an hour from Thessaloniki. There's the town of Veria, which had a large Jewish population as well, and it's a very charming town. There is the wine town of Nausa, which is about an hour and a half to hour and a half to 2 hours from Thessaloniki. Oh, also there's a winery closer to Thessaloniki called Yero Vasilio, which is famous in Greece, which is it's close to the airport of Thessaloniki. So that's an easy day trip from Thessaloniki as well if you're interested in wine and wine tasting.
Okay.
So getting back to the west, Mount Olympus is only an hour and a half. So that's definitely, if you like mountains and hiking, that's the perfect place to go. And there's a Platamonas, which is a lovely town on the sea with a fortress on the way to Mount Olympus. And another traditional village called Palios Padelemonas, which is at the foot of Mount Olympus, which is gorgeous as well. And
Okay. I'm going to start winding us up. Any other places you can't miss if you're in the region of Thessaloniki?
oh goodness, all those places. I would say
You mentioned
okay.
Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus is also heading down to the Pelion Peninsula, which we did an episode on last week. And
Yes,
so
yes.
you can tie that episode and this episode together fairly easily as one trip if you've got a
Yes,
couple weeks.
definitely. You need at least, I would say you need at least 2 weeks to do that. You
Yeah,
can't,
I would agree.
Depends on how much time you have. Yeah, there's just so much to see. But I would say if you want to go outside the city, it's Halkidiki Peninsula. If you want to swim, if you're there in summer months and you want to enjoy the sea, Nia is what I would say, or Amuriani. The whole peninsula of Sitonia, just rent a car and travel the whole peninsula is what I would say, because there's so many little coves and beaches and things to see. And then if you want to go to the mountains, of course, Mount Olympus.
Mm-hmm.
And Vergina as well is it's amazing, the archaeological site there. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Excellent.
that's what I would say.
As we start to wrap this up, you're standing in the prettiest spot in, or I'll give you near Thessaloniki. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Well, in Thessaloniki, I would say in the Trigono Tower, the tower up at the top of the upper city.
Got it. The old fortifications.
Part of the old fortifications, you're sitting there, or you're walking along the promenade along the seafront.
Got it. By Aristotle Square.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It's a
Excellent.
couple of kilometers. It's about a mile long. The whole walk. It's
Okay.
yeah, but that whole walk is gorgeous. It's right on the sea. And a clear day, you can see Mount Olympus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And one thing that makes you laugh and say only in Thessaloniki.
I don't know, the people, I guess, because they're so laid back. They're like, oh, they even talk more slowly than other places. And the food, only in Thessaloniki. Only in Thessaloniki can you walk down a street and have on each side of the street delicious little tapas restaurants. Just so many in a row, it's hard to choose.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize the city in just 3 words, what 3 words would you choose?
What 3 words would I use? I would use culture.
Okay.
Or maybe, hold on a second. You didn't prepare me for this.
We talk about it every episode. That's why I asked if you listen to one.
Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. I didn't listen to the end of the episode.
Yeah, apparently.
No, I'm sorry.
What a giveaway.
Multicultural. No, I wouldn't say. Well, I'd say multicultural. I would
Okay.
say delicious, maybe.
Okay.
The food is a big part of the city. And fun.
Excellent. Our guest again has been Carol from Ambrosia Travel, ambrosiatravel.com. And I should point out that Carol can help you plan your trip to Greece. That's one of the things that she does. And so if you're looking for tips of how much she understands about Greece.
Yes. Actually, it's ambrosiasc.com.
Oh, no, I did it
Yeah.
wrong. Okay,
I'm sorry.
ambrosiasc.com. I'll put the correct link in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank
And Carol,
you.
thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love for Greece and specifically for Thessaloniki.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
A special thanks to the patrons of the show who help support Amateur Traveler financially. If you have listened to Amateur Traveler for a while and you've enjoyed the trips that you've taken better because of Amateur Traveler, then think about subscribing and becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/amateurtraveler to learn more. The first of what I think will be 3 blog posts on Puerto Rico and my recent trip there has come out on the Amateur Traveler blog, so check that out, especially if you're interested in working from Puerto Rico, which is what this one focuses on. The next one will focus on food in Old San Juan, and the next one on things to do. I would love to do an episode on Puerto Rico, but I really would like to have somebody who knows it better than me. So if you know somebody who would be a great guest to talk about Puerto Rico, not just San Juan, but more than that, I would love to send some tourism to that island that had some trouble here recently with Hurricane Fiona, and an island that I have learned to really love here over the last couple weeks. So if you know someone, again, send me an email, or if you think that you know of someone who would be a great guest on the show for some other destination that we haven't talked about recently, the listeners of the show make the best recommendations for guests for the show. Some of the recent guests have come through listener feedback. So please, and you can say that you were the person who would be a great guest on the show. That's okay too. Drop an email to host@amateurtraveler.com or chris2x@gmail.com if you run into any problems with that. With that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, and better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.